Since the 1930s, Marvel and DC have reigned as kings of comic books. So for part one of my series, I'm going to decide which one comes out on top. And before I begin, I was going to say, this is completely my opinion. And I'm not saying neither one is bad. All I'm saying is this video is completely my opinion, and by the end of it, I'm going to pick who the true winner is. It's just that I prefer this comic book company over this comic book company. So since DC started first, I'll start with them first. And before I continue, I was going to say that I'm going to take in other comic books done by either DC or Marvel. So like Watchmen and V for Vendetta will count. With the DC comic books, they're more straightforward. The superheroes they give us are more straightforward. A lot of the superheroes in the comic books are a lot straightforward. Like, so the man who has the strength, the speed, and just the ability, he clearly is a Superman. Then there's a man who is the fastest man alive. Then we have an Amazon warrior princess. And then we have a man who dresses up as a bat. So basically, the superheroes of DC are more straightforward. And I will get to Marvel very soon. With the DC superheroes, I find them more engaging than the Marvel characters because the backstories of these DC characters are more well developed than any of the Marvel ones, in my opinion. As is the norm with a lot of superheroes, like a close relative of theirs has to die when the superhero is very young. For example, Bruce Wayne's parents are murdered when he's just a young boy, and Clark Kent is sent away when his planet dies and he loses his father and mother. With DC, the characters are more straightforward, but that's what sets them apart from Marvel. With Marvel, there are a variety of different superheroes, like a man who can crawl up walls like a spider, people who are born with special abilities, a family of 4 who save the world, and the Avengers. With the Marvel superheroes, there's a nice variety to them, so like anyone can just jump into a Marvel comic book and just get hooked into any of these characters, as there's so many different types of these characters. So like anyone can jump into Spider-Man, anyone can jump into Fantastic Four, anyone can jump into the Avengers. Marvel adds variety, so you don't have to, put all your time into this one group. You can like devote your time into every other group or into one superhero. And that's kind of what brings DC down a bit, because like the only major superhero group that is well known is the Justice League. It's just this entire group, and like there isn't that much variety to them. And the fact that a lot of the superheroes have the same-ish powers and like they're not really that special, like as I mentioned before, the fastest man alive, a man who is basically a Superman. They're really more straightforward. At least with Marvel, you can expect more variety. However, when it comes to story, I think DC does it better. With Marvel, a lot of the superheroes try to be funny and they try to crack humor up. Some of them do it well, like Spider-Man, he's a funny guy when he cracks quips, and Deadpool is the funniest Marvel hero. But with DC superheroes, there's not a lot of humor to them. They're more, serious and just really want to get the job done. With Marvel, it's more fun, and they don't take their job too seriously like DC, but they still take it seriously while also having fun. But I prefer DC over this. With DC superheroes, they show a better representation of what these characters went through when they were young and how they became who they are. With Marvel, they do the same thing, but DC, they take it more seriously, and it's just more gripping from DC than Marvel. Now, there's been a lot of famous people who have worked on Marvel and DC. For example, for Marvel, Stan Lee has famously worked on, a lot of superheroes, and Stan Lee has created a lot of well-known Marvel superheroes that we all know and love and just cherish them. With DC, it's hard to, pick a well-known name, but like, everyone knows who Bob Kane is. He's the guy who created Batman. But to me, like, there's more star power behind Marvel as, Stan Lee is the forefront. Like, he created a lot of these characters, and you immediately grasp to these characters, because, because here's a man who put his heart and soul into these characters, and that made you put your own heart and soul into these characters, because he put his effort into it. With DC, it's a bit hard to, grasp to someone who's done it. There are a lot of famous people, and like Bob Kane, Alan Moore, they're all well known, but Stan Lee triumphs over all of them. Now I get to specific stories. These are the stories that the characters are involved in. With Marvel, they have created a lot of events. Like, the most famous event is the Civil War. As this for me was the first time I ever saw, every superhero come together and just go for this huge event. And it was just unheard to me to see this big group of heroes just come together, and this was a huge event. And you always got excited when these superheroes came together to solve this situation. With DC, you didn't get that excitement as like, oh, there's a situation, Justice League, assemble! Like, there was really nothing to that. When every single Marvel superhero came together, this was huge. It was an event that will always be remembered. And Civil War specifically. Civil War was probably the hugest comic book storyline to come out, and just to involve all these characters, this was huge. However, now we get to quality, and I do admit there's been a lot of good Marvel storylines. A lot of the origin stories of these characters are really good, like Spider-Man's origin story is the best. However, with DC, in my opinion, they make better stories. Like, they made the Doomsday storyline. This was also a huge event. All of the DC superheroes going up against this one monster. And like, it took every single one of these superheroes to bring him down. Like, this was huge. Also, specifically, I'm going to be talking about Batman. Batman delivered a lot of great comic book storylines. Like, The Dark Knight Returns is just comic legend, and The Killing Joke is the best one-shot comic book of all time. I'm getting off the topic of superheroes. DC have made V for Vendetta, and this was a huge comic book as well, and that led to the popular film as well. And now to wrap everything up, it's really hard for me to choose a winner here. With Marvel, you get more variety, and you grasp the characters more as there's a huge variety of them, and you don't have to tie yourself down to all of them. You can tie yourself down to like a few of them. Like, you could tie yourself to the X-Men, you could tie yourself to Spider-Man, you could tie yourself to Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, the Hulk, any of these characters. With DC, you can only tie yourself to one specific character, as each one didn't trust each other. In my opinion, Marvel is more targeted for a younger generation, as like, if you think about it, a lot more of the DC storylines and comic books are kind of targeted toward adult audiences. Like the comic books from DC are a lot more darker than Marvel. With Marvel, it's more lighthearted, but with Marvel, sometimes there are those dark moments, and like, it's not meant for a younger generation. Like, Marvel does a good job of, you know, making it both for the younger generation and for the older generation. I grasp to DC more because it's targeted towards that older generation. And in my opinion, DC did deliver a lot more better comic books. So for me to pick a winner, I'm gonna have to add 1 point to one and demerit 1 point from another. And I'm gonna have to take a point down from Marvel because of this one thing that has really bothered me since the beginning. What's the deal with the X-Men? Like, I don't have a problem with the X-Men, but like, for some reason, all the normal people are afraid of the X-Men, but they have no problems with superheroes like Spider-Man, the Avengers, Fantastic Four, yet they're afraid of the X-Men. The only way I can think of it is they hate people who are born different. This is something that has always bothered me. Do normal people like it when these people are given superpowers, but they don't like it when people are born with powers? Like, this has really bothered me. Like, what's the reason behind this? This has made no sense to me for decades. For DC, the one point that shoots it up above Marvel is one thing. DC published Watchmen. This is the greatest graphic novel / comic book of all time. Not only is it beautifully written, beautifully illustrated, but this has just stood the test of time. And like, Marvel hasn't even come close to publishing something like this. Like, this is an absolute masterpiece. This is the greatest thing I've ever read, and this is why DC beats Marvel over comic books. Stay tuned for part 2, where I tackle Marvel and DC in TV shows. I'm NETX5, thank you for watching.